Welcome. This is March the 9th, 2025. I'm with Pannobhasa in North Carolina. I was a former monk for 30 years, now a layperson. And it's the first time we've gotten together since Donald Trump became president almost 2 years ago. So we should update, do an update on the world political situation, current events. So Pannobhasa, let's talk about Donald Trump.
Okay. Hail Brian. Hail Cat.
Yeah, so I'm glad he got elected. I'm quite happy that Kamala didn't get elected, and he's made a real shakeup in his first month in office. A lot of things I didn't even think about, like the Department of Government Efficiency. I didn't really, and USAID. I didn't even know about USAID. Now I realize what a waste that's been. So he's done some good things. Well, what's your impression?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much is happening that it's hard to really, kind of have a complete view of what's going on or anything close to a complete view. That I'm just kind of sitting back and absorbing some of it. And I'm glad that he's president. I mean, Kamala Harris would have been a disaster, which has been like Obama's fourth term. I mean, she wouldn't be running the country any more than Biden was running the country. It'd just be like these handlers that, just these bureaucrats, the deep state or whatever, that are calling the shots and just driving America into the ground. And, it would have been awful. So I am glad. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to turn out. I mean, there is kind of the danger that Trump will kind of go power mad. It is possible that he was persecuted so hard. I mean, they were doing everything they could to destroy him, including just like having the Secret Service stand down while the guy took 8 shots at him, at
Yeah, gosh, what a
that
story.
rally in Pennsylvania. Trump, he definitely, they just riled him up. It's like if they hadn't been persecuting him the whole time, then, especially if the 2020 election was just totally legit and he had won, then it wouldn't be nearly as big of a deal as now. In a way, it's lucky that he lost the 2020 election by whatever means. We don't have to go there, but it's like he has learned and also been persecuted so much. Just they've been tried so hard to destroy him that it's just like no more Mr. Nice Guy now. He might have been willing to kind of play along with a lot of the game if he had won the 2020 election, or even if, they hadn't been just doing everything they could to destroy him, but because they're like castrated eunuchs, they can't fight nearly as well as he can. And he's stronger than the whole rest of them, essentially. It's like Europe, like JD Vance, the vice president, goes to Germany in Munich, and he's telling like the security councils there that like during the Cold War, it was the bad guys that were like censoring free speech and censoring silent prayer and all
Yeah,
this kind of stuff,
yeah.
and rigging elections and like calling off elections and this kind of stuff. And now it's the EU that's doing it. And there was like one German like authority or bureaucrat or whatever who's actually, he's just breaks down and is like crying like a girl, like in front of everybody else. He's trying to give the speech and he just breaks down boo-hooing all over the place. And that's just indicative of the fact that what the globalists are going for is just a completely feminized, castrated society. And so I'm glad that America has not been fully castrated yet. Eastern Europe hasn't been fully castrated yet. And if there's ever a fight between men and castrated eunuchs, the men are very likely going to win. Because,
Yeah.
it's like one reason why the globalists are so feminized and everything is they want to like have no more fighting, no more violence, except they're willing to pay, they want America to help fight in Ukraine because they're just too wimpy to do it themselves. They're kind of okay with war so long as it suits their purposes. They're trying to destroy Russia because Russia isn't going along with like the globalism and the environmentalism and all that. So I think it's good that you've got someone who likes to fight, who is like the leader of America now. And that's one thing that the globalists and the left in general just cannot relate to it at all. Someone who doesn't just cave when you start attacking him. You know, he just fights back. He fights back harder, and he seems to kind of like it. And they just can't relate to that at all because they're just kind of like cowards, you know. They're just sort of feminized and timid, and they just can't deal with it. And so they're like the Democrats in America are just like completely on the back foot. They don't even know what to do now.
Yeah, they
You
don't
know,
know what to do. I
yeah,
mean,
they're just like just acting crazier and crazier, and just I mean their approval ratings are just tanking now,
yeah.
which is good. I mean, if they just destroy themselves as a party, I mean, I'd be fine with that, I guess. It'll take a while before the Republicans go completely corrupt again like they were before. Where, I mean, for most of my life, voting for a president, I mean, voting between Republicans and Democrats is like choosing between Coke and Pepsi. I mean, they were all bought by the same
Yeah.
lobbyists and,
Yeah.
donors and all this. They're all just kind of following along with the status quo. It's just that the Republicans would be having their foot on the brake a little more with regard to this progressivism stuff, but they weren't turning it around going the other direction. They're just kind of slowing things down so that it takes 20 years to get gay marriage instead of 10 years to get gay marriage. But it's the way it is. So I mean, it is possible that at some point that the Trump administration will just like cross the line and start becoming, like, I don't know, just out of control. But at present, they seem to be pretty focused, and they're doing what most Americans want. So that when you've got like hysterical, indoctrinated leftists saying that Trump is destroying democracy and he's like an authoritarian dictator and all this, I mean, what Trump is doing is within his limits according to the Constitution. And also,
Yeah.
what he's doing is what most Americans approve of.
Yeah, like the border, like
Yeah, closing the borders, kicking
security
out
border.
illegal aliens, like getting like trannies out of girls' sports, this kind of stuff. Most Americans are supportive of Trump with regard to that. And the Democrats just hysterically adopt the 20% position. It's like 20% of people are in favor of biological males competing in women's sports. 80% are against it. And then they just are like dying on the hill, just hysterically, just irrationally, partly just because you've got hysterical, irrational people that are rising to the top of the Democratic Party, including some relatively low IQ ones. And it's like the Democrats just cannot deal with the fact that there is some truth to the idea of incompetent diversity hires. I mean, when you have incompetent diversity hires, people that are chosen just because they're lesbians or just because they're have dark skin or whatever, they're not the most qualified person, they're not going to do as well. They're going to mess things up. And they just cannot deal with that because it's like one of the fundamental beliefs of the left is that everyone is the same. It's not just equal under the law. It's like everyone has to be like the same. So there's men and women have to be the same, and all the different ethnicities are the same. And so if there's any differences, it's not because one ethnicity or one gender does something better than the others. It's like men do certain things better than women do. Like being firemen, a man can just pick up a 200-pound unconscious person, throw him over his shoulder or whatever, and carry him out of the burning building. Women can't do that, and women they don't want to face that. They think, well, women are just as good as men. Women can do anything as good as men can, and so they put that into practice, and it just doesn't work. So it's like the realists that are more rightwards that really can accept that certain types of people are better at certain types of jobs and that everyone isn't exactly the same. They're going to win just because the left just cannot deal with reality anymore. They prefer their ideology to empirical facts. And so that's one reason why they're losing now is they've just got incompetent diversity hires and just irrationality trying to compete against strength and logic and rationality to some degree, at least greater strength and logic and rationality than they've got.
They
And they
keep
just
saying that
cannot.
Trump's irrational. Trump's crazy and irrational. He's a dictator.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got some irrationality. I mean, everybody's irrational to some degree. If we weren't irrational, we'd just be robots.
We're
But
fully enlightened. Yeah, the Puttajana, the worldly, average worldly person is insane, the Buddha said. Forgive the Buddhist.
yeah, but I think it's good that they're gonna. I mean, they're just like auditing everything and just showing all this corruption and fraud.
Yeah.
And also, they're showing that all this left wing activism stuff was actually like subsidized by the government. That it's not nearly this grassroots progressivism thing. That it was like you had globalists, especially on the left, that are subsidizing all this. You know, they're paying people to protest, and they're paying like left wing propaganda outlets and all this. You know, it's the taxpayers' money is just going to support all this stuff. And now that the funds are getting yanked, you know, it's getting canceled. A lot of the left is just like in free fall, just collapsing because it was propped up by all this taxpayer funded subsidies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the press secretary was a black lesbian under Biden. Now we got Carolyn Levitt, really hot, a 10 out of 10, 27-year-old gorgeous blonde. Really, what a change in
Yeah,
press
well,
secretaries.
Trump. It seems like he for whatever reasons, I think he just likes pretty women for starters. But yeah, he's got like Kristi Noem, who was like the governor of, was it North or South Dakota? I mean, she's a relative hottie also. Like Pam Bondi, the new attorney general. I mean, she's you know, middle aged by now, but she's still a relatively good looking woman. So it's
What about
like,
Tulsi Gabbard? She's also a really decent person. She's pretty attractive too.
yeah. So it's like pretty much all the women, except for maybe his chief. I can't remember what it was, like his campaign manager that he put in charge of something. I can't remember now. Is one of his chief advisors. I mean, she's an older lady. She's not all that good looking, but most of the women that he has chosen for positions are relatively good looking women, which I
Especially
mean,
Carolyn Levitt, press
it could just
secretary.
be
Wow.
that he likes good looking women. You know, he's sort of prejudiced in favor of hotties, which is just natural. Or it could be more of like a PR kind of thing where he's having like pretty faces as, you know, representing the Republican Party now.
Yeah, I think so.
which
That's
may have
intelligent.
some kind of like higher purpose rather than just preferring hotties to plain looking women.
Yeah, I think it's got a good purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also with South Africa, he's granted like refugee status. A lot of the whites in South Africa living in shanty towns, like they're prejudiced against for jobs, discriminated against jobs. So the Democrats never helped whites from South Africa come to America. They speak English, they're part of our language and culture. So he's
Yeah.
allowing them into America. So
Yeah,
that's a
he
really good
recently
move.
canceled all foreign aid to South Africa because of their like discrimination against white people.
Yeah, so he's using his presidential powers in a good way in that example.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like he's certainly the most important, consequential president of my lifetime. And I think he seems to be the best president of my lifetime, especially this second term that he's, you know, less than 2 months into now, just because, I mean, he is just absolutely determined that he is gonna like accomplish more shit than any other president has ever accomplished. Partly he's like a narcissist, you know, he wants to go down in history as this great hero, you know, but that's the way great politicians have always been. You look at like I did a study once of, you know, all the people that were called the Great. You know, there's Alexander the Great and Peter the Great of Russia and Catherine the Great of Russia and, you know, Valentinian the Great of the Roman Empire, Theodosius the Great, people that were called the Great. And as a general rule, they were ruthless badasses who were like narcissists, but they had enough sense. I mean, they loved their country and they had enough sense that if they're going to go down in history, they wanted to go down in history as like a great savior to their people. You know, they wanted to just be immortalized by history, you know? That's like part of their narcissism, their egomania and all that, but it's channeled in a good direction.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the way Trump is. And one good thing about Trump is what you see is what you get. You know, he's not like this fake, phony politician like almost all politicians are. It's like, and when he talks, I mean, he's just putting it out there, which is
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
That's refreshing also.
Yeah, and people accuse Trump of just wanting to make money, using the president to make more money, but that doesn't make sense to me because he does have a big ego. He should be much more concerned about his place in history than just making money. He's 7, 8 years old. Why would he be concerned about money? Obviously, his place in history is far more important to his ego than just making money.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, he almost got shot in the head for this, and you know, it just kind of made him more serious about what he was doing. You know, it's not money. I mean, it's he's already got that. You know, he's already got fame. You know, he just wants as much as he can get for himself. In a way, he's kind of like a Julius Caesar type. You know, he just wants to rise as high as he possibly can, as high as a human being possibly can. And you know,
Yeah.
he's doing it like politically and socially. I mean, he's not trying to become enlightened or anything, obviously.
Yeah. Also, he only has 4 years left, so he doesn't have to worry about getting reelected since you can only have 2 terms. So I guess because he's not worried about reelection, he can do what he thinks is really best for America.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, some people argue he's got less than 2 years because the midterms usually, whatever party is in power loses, you know, like they lose control of Congress at the midterm elections. So, I mean, whether that's going to happen or not is uncertain because what he's doing is really popular, and the Democrats are just getting nuttier and nuttier. Like at the his address to Congress just a few nights ago, you know, he's bringing out this 13-year-old black kid with brain
Yeah.
cancer who's like an
Yeah.
honorary Secret Service member now, and the Democrats just sit there and just like frown. You know, just like crickets from them, so that you know it's he's making them look horrible because they're going to oppose anything that he does, no matter what it is. So you know he like honors some kid with brain cancer. They're against that, and
Yeah.
it makes them look horrible.
They're disrespecting a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
thanks for pointing out, like, he's got the majority in the House and the Senate now. And yeah, it's a good point. Usually it switches with the party in power after 2 years. So in a way, he's got to do as much as he can in 2 years before the midterms, right?
yeah, and then like his first term, he had Congress on his side. I think he had the Senate too. But back then, like it was still establishment Republicans that were opposed to Trump. And now, like
Yeah.
the anti-Trump Republicans have pretty much all been like primaried out and just have resigned in disgrace
Yeah, even
and
Vice
have
President
failed.
Pence, he wasn't really a Trumper, but Vance is more of a Trumper. So now he's got his lineage, like Vance set up as his successor to keep the lineage going.
Yeah, that would be nice. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Vance is the next president after Trump is.
Yeah. I think Trump himself said it's too early to endorse Vance. I guess Vance has to do something to establish himself.
Yeah. Well, his speech to the European Security Councils was good when he was
Yeah,
like
I was
pointing
impressed
out
with
to
that.
them that they're now doing what the bad guys were doing during the Cold War.
Yeah, we should also mention a great accomplishment. He really wants to end the Ukraine war. Like 1 million or more have been killed, and he wants to stop the killing of the Ukrainians and Russians. So that's a good thing. That's a really good thing.
Yeah, it's like 25% of the population of Ukraine is now gone. You know, they've
Wow.
either died or they've fled the country as refugees. So, I mean, the globalists, I mean, I think they started the whole Ukraine war just as a way of taking out Russia, who refuse. I mean, the Russians refuse to just play along with the castration thing and just the globalist environmentalist green thing and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, Russia has sort of arbitrarily been chosen to be the boogeyman, the bad guy, when really, I mean, the Russians aren't that bad. I mean, you compare them with Ukraine, they're pretty similar actually.
Yeah, I think it might have been other reasons for that. Maybe they wanted to depopulate Ukraine or just kill a lot of white people. But Zelensky never really seemed to care about the Ukrainian people. It just sends them to their deaths.
Yeah, I don't even think he speaks the language.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's even Ukrainian.
No, well, I know he's Jewish, so he's not
Yeah.
very Ukrainian, and most Ukrainians are Christians. Yeah, so disempowering Zelensky's, and Trump has obviously not shown a lot of respect for Zelensky, more for Putin, whereas Biden refused to even talk to Putin in all those 4 years.
Yeah, I think Putin and Trump have a certain respect for each other because they're both sort of like strong men, you know. They can get shit done. And like a lot of these bureaucrats like in the EU and all that, I mean, they're like feminized. They don't really accomplish anything important other than bad stuff like letting in floods of like immigrants, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what
So,
else has Trump has accomplished in his month and a half? We should go through a list. We covered a lot of the major ones. What else comes to mind?
well, I mean, just the audits of government waste, and then
Yeah.
just the closing the border. I mean, those are two of the main ones. Plus, of course, doing whatever he can to end wars, because being a businessman, he knows that wars are expensive.
Yeah, he also appointed Robert Kennedy, Make America Healthy Again. So that's an accomplishment. It took a lot
Yeah,
for
that's kind
Kennedy
of
to get approved.
interesting. That like a lot of the main people in the Trump administration used to be Democrats up until relatively recently. Like
Yeah.
Kennedy ran for president against Biden, you know, like as for the Democrat nominee, and they just persecuted him pretty much the way they were persecuting Trump, and they're trying to keep him off the ballots and suing his campaign and all this stuff, and just drove him into the arms of the Republicans because the Republicans were willing to accept him, and the Democrats just, as soon as he was running for president against Biden, who was supposed to just be installed, you know, there wasn't supposed to be an actual democratic process. That you know, they just turned against him. They turned against Tulsi Gabbard, who was a Democrat. I mean, Elon Musk was a Democrat up until just a few years ago. Trump was a Democrat for a long time.
Oh, I
Even
didn't know
like
that.
Joe
Was he younger?
Rogan.
He was a Democrat?
Yeah, Trump was.
Oh, yeah, but Bobby Kennedy Jr. He actually approached Kamala. But even she ignored him. So then he makes a deal with Trump. He may have helped Trump get elected. It might have been decisive, his help.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. I mean, he endorsed Trump after Trump told him that, you know, you endorse me and you'll get a important position in the cabinet, or, you know, in the administration.
Yeah. So I think that's a great accomplishment of Trump. We'll see what Robert Kennedy can do. He'll just get started. But that whole effort to make America healthy again and fight the pharmaceutical companies and deal with all that stuff, that could be a major accomplishment of the Trump
Yeah.
administration.
I haven't seen much happen of that, but I mean, it's still a good chance that he's going to be doing something good.
Yeah, it's good that he's there. Yeah. And Kash Patel and the FBI, I guess that's a pretty good nomination as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I was told that when he was sworn in, he had his hand on the Bhagavad Gita instead of the Bible because he's a
Yeah,
Hindu.
yeah, watch that. Yeah.
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 So that's good. I mean, the Trump has gotten, that's one thing he learned after the first term. The first term, he was just trying to put out an olive branch to like the neocons, you know, the neoconservatives, like the establishment neoconservatives, and they just all stabbed him in the back as much as they could. So now he's
Yeah.
learned he's going to get people that are certainly on his side, that are, you know, with the program, and they're just like, man, is really, they're just getting shit done that is unprecedented, really. And the
Yeah.
Democrats, again, they just don't know what to do. You know, they're just like in a state of chaos. They got no leaders. Any leaders that they've got are like publicly disgraced, like Gavin Newsom. I mean, he was one of the main bets for who would be Democratic nominee for president, and then it's like all these wildfires in Los Angeles and stuff, just making him look horrible.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, compared to his first term, the second term seems to have better conditions. In the first term, he had to fight this whole Russiagate bullshit, which wasn't true. And the left was just screaming in the first term. Now they seem to be a bit more accepting, or a bit more powerless. The first term,
yeah,
they seemed to more power to really disrupt it.
yeah, the globalist establishment was firmly in power at the time, and they were doing everything they could to stop him from accomplishing anything. And now, I mean, the globalist establishment is on the defensive, just all around the world, really.
Yeah, yeah. I can imagine on my BitChute channel, it's probably not so bad for you on YouTube, but on the comments on BitChute, I'm sure they're saying, well, Trump, he's still very pro-Israel. So that's a concern. I'm wondering, I kind of want to wait and see what's he going to do about Iran. Like his first term, he didn't go to war with Iran when people were pushing him to. But what's he going to do with Gaza? Like he had a far out idea with Gaza, like help get America take over to Gaza to help these people get out of Gaza. Maybe it makes some sense to have some compassion for all these Palestinians. But I'm a bit
Yeah.
concerned. What's he going to do for Israel? we'll wait and see.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Israelis weren't real happy about what he was saying about Gaza, like turning Gaza into an American territory or something. I mean, that Netanyahu, I mean, he was taken aback by that. That was Trump was being sort of more powerful than Netanyahu was at the time and just making this unilateral statement that hadn't been like approved by Israel. But
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
want their
it is true.
Greater Israel project. That would be part of Greater Israel.
Yeah,
Yes.
possibly.
Yeah.
Although it is true that a lot of right wingers, they'll just call him Zion Don. You know, he's just sold out to the Jews and all this. But I mean, it just makes sense to have Israel as an ally. I mean, it is like politically expedient to have Israel
Yeah.
as an ally in the Near East.
Yeah.
So
I tell my friends that I say it's better to vote for the candidate that's going to try to harm the world slower instead of the candidate that's going to try to harm the world faster. So anybody has to sort of accommodate Israeli power. If you're going to make it to the level of President of the United States, you
yeah,
have
it
to
is true though
accommodate
that
them.
he has relatively few Jewish people in his administration. I mean, there's like Lee Zeldin, who is like head of the EPA, who is Jewish, and then it was like his ambassador to the United Nations. I can't remember her name. It's Elise Stefanik, that she's Jewish, and that's about it. I mean, most of his important cabinet picks, not unlike the Democrats, where they're like half Jewish. So I mean, there's that. I mean,
Oh, that's a good point. I guess they're all pro-Israel, but I guess the Democrats are more actually Jewish. But I guess Trump's picks are kind of all pro-Israel, I would assume.
yeah. I mean, you're not going to get very far being anti-Israel. I mean, it's just a
Yeah.
reality. I mean,
Yeah, it's
just
a
think of
reality.
the last great world leader who was like very anti-Jewish. I mean, he wound up getting ganged up on and wound up losing.
Who was that?
Oh, he was he was like chancellor of Germany for a while, like back in the 30s, and
Oh, that fellow. Yeah. 30s
yeah.
and 40s in Germany. Yeah.
Yeah, if you just take an unequivocally anti-Jewish or anti-Israel attitude, then I mean you're going to get a lot of pushback from like dark corners, and all kinds of things are going to be happening that could be easily avoided if you just just didn't make like this open statement.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I
there's
guess
that.
with the Trump, it's realistic that he's accommodating Israeli power. But I think Trump is sincere his intention that he does care about America. Like he might be accommodating Israeli power. I don't think he's sincerely putting Israel first. I think he wants to put America first. I think he's
Yeah, I think he's
sincere.
sincerely patriotic. I think he sincerely loves his country and wants to make America great again.
Yeah, I just want to
At
address the
first, I mean
comments
that's
below the video, right? They're going to be dumping us in the comment section. So in my view, he is actually sincere that he cares about America. Other people say, "Oh no, he's a total Zionist all the way, and he's just faking it." That's what they'll
yeah,
say in the
yeah. Well, I
comments.
mean on BitChute, I mean we get called globetards just because we don't think the Earth is flat.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have comments from them as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're
So I
both.
mean, thus far, I mean he's
Yeah,
accomplished more in his first less than what is it, 2 months,
yeah, a month and a half, right? It's March 9th
than
today.
most
It's
presidents
January 20th.
accomplish in like 4 years. And
Yeah,
it's generally stuff that the majority of Americans are in favor of. So yeah, I'm just sitting back and continuing to watch with great interest, to the point that my woman is getting sick of me listening to politics all the time. But still, it's really interesting. I mean, we're living in interesting times.
yeah. I
I mean, it's
find
been
I'm.
interesting ever since Trump ran for president the first time, but
Yeah,
he's actually really just like bringing the hammer down now, which is what a lot of people wanted. It's like some people voted just for accelerationism and a bull in the china shop. And I mean, that's pretty much what Trump is doing to some degree.
I remember when you and I first met in 2019. You said, "At least it's damn interesting having Trump as president."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is.
But I guess I could argue that President Biden actually he did a good job because I think his intention was to harm America and harm the world. So he brings in all kinds of immigrants. He was doing all that he could within reason to harm America. So I think he did a good job for what he actually intended to do and what the
Yeah, just
globalists were.
pretty much just like dilute Western civilization down so it's not so strong anymore. I mean, that's like one of the main purposes of globalism is you got to have everybody be equal. You know, that's what the left wants. They insist that everybody be the same. And when you've got like a certain ethnicity that is just dominating in certain fields, you got to like do something about that. You got to like dilute it down and like undermine its cultural traditions and do everything you can to weaken it, which is what the
Yeah.
globalists are doing, what the Democratic Party's been doing.
Yeah, diversity, equity, inclusion. So I think Trump is more of a meritocracy, in favor of a meritocracy, which I agree with.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's there's something called biological Leninism, something like that.
Oh, what's that?
It's pretty much what we've been talking about, where a meritocracy. I mean, like with biological Leninism, Leninism was it's the people that would rise to power weren't the most qualified people. It was just the ones that were most loyal to the Communist Party. That was the way original, like the Soviet Union worked. But now it's a biological Leninism where the people that rise to the top aren't the most qualified people. It's like you got to have a black lesbian. And so they just put a black lesbian in the position.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it cannot compete against meritocracy. Meritocracy is just going to trample them into the mud, especially if the meritocracy has made up its mind that it's just done with this bullshit and it's going to get shit done regardless of all the hysterical screaming that goes on. And that's pretty much what Trump has decided that he's going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, meritocracy, I mean, just realistically, meritocracy is going to win out over diversity, equity, and inclusion, where you just put a black lesbian in charge of the fire department just because you don't have a black lesbian in charge of anything yet.
Another accomplishment of Trump, he announced that the official policy of American government is that there is two sexes, male and female. Like, wow, that's real clarity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from the Buddhist point of view, there's technically three genders. You know, you've got males, females, and then you've got the pandakas that are like anyone who's in between. You know,
Okay.
it's sort of like eunuchs and that kind of thing. So yeah, I could accept another like a intermediate gender between fully male and fully female that all the transsexuals would go into. Like in Buddhism, even like homosexuals would be considered sort of intermediate because you know they're not fully male if they're like you know being twinks or whatever.
Yeah, I would go with the Buddhist view on that, but I'm pretty happy, at least instead of having 57 genders, it's better to have two, even though there might
Yeah,
actually be three.
yeah, two is definitely an improvement over however many it was.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so we're both happy that Trump's elected. I'm still going to wait and see and everything he's going to do. Do you have a wait and see attitude on Trump, or are you just very
Yeah,
happy that
definitely. I'm definitely just sitting back and seeing what happens next.
yeah,
But I'm relatively optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic that he's not going to completely go overboard and
yeah,
that he is determined to get good stuff done that's going to help America and no more of this America being like the fall guy who's just like subsidizing all these other countries and getting nothing in return for it.
yeah. I find I'm watching a lot of Fox News now, more than ever since Trump's got in, because they're obviously pro-Trump. So, like, I'm
Yeah.
into my UFOs and my extraterrestrials, but I'm more into the real political scene just watching Fox News. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
all
even
free on
Fox
YouTube.
News wasn't pro-Trump until relatively recently. There were a few people that were
Oh,
pro-Trump. You know, it's like Hannity and some of these other ones, Judge Janine Pirro were like pro-Trump from
and
way
Tucker
back.
Carlson, I guess,
But
was.
I mean, you had like, oh, what's his name? Eddie Munster. He was Paul Ryan. I mean, he's on the board of directors of Fox News, and he's been an anti-Trumper from the beginning. So there's still anti-Trumpers on Fox News, and they stabbed in the back on election night of 2020.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess nowadays the most Republicans, including the neocons, the rhinos, have just faced reality that the Trump faction has won and that their faction has lost. You know, it's
Yeah.
not just that they're losing ground; they have lost, and most of them are willing to just accept that. And even some of the Democrats now are starting to accept that, you know, what they stand for has lost in American public opinion.
Yeah, the Democrats, they've got 2 years or 4 years to have some populist candidate that makes sense, that could run against Republicans. Otherwise, it's just going to crash and burn.
Yeah, which is fine with me. I mean, I'd be happy to see them, just the Democrats, just become sort of like this minority opposition party for the next several years.
But
So finally they come to this.
you think political reality would make them come to their senses and have a reasonable candidate?
Except that they've been taken over by hysterical feminists and like low IQ people that just because we don't have a low IQ person in charge of the party yet, so let's install one. And they just cannot accept meritocracy or any kind of like human biodiversity. It's just they think everyone's the same, and so a black lesbian chosen almost at random can do the job as well as any white man. And it just doesn't work that way. It's like after Trump became president, shortly after Trump became president, you had a helicopter like ram into a
That plane,
a
yeah,
commercial airplane.
yeah.
Turns out the pilot of the helicopter was a diversity hire. It was a woman diversity hire. And then you had just shortly after that, a plane flips upside down at an airport in Canada,
In
like
Canada, yeah.
Montreal or
Toronto.
something like that.
I think Toronto,
Surprise,
yeah.
surprise. Pilot was a female diversity hire.
Yeah, the whole airline, Delta Airlines, was all women. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and
called
they're bragging about how by
manless
2026
flight.
they're going to have X% of their pilots be women or like minorities, and it's like so. I mean, if you're going to fly in an airplane, I mean, do you want like somebody like a black lesbian just because she's a black lesbian, or do you want like the most skillful pilot who might be a white guy? If you're going to have surgery. Do you want the surgery from the most skillful surgeon, or do you want one from some underrepresented ethnicity? Just because, they just got into medical school just because of their skin color. It's just ridiculous. And
Yeah.
it's just, we've got reality on our side. We've got Darwin's survival of the fittest on our side now, because the left has just rejected that, and they think that their hysterical, irrational ideology is somehow going to prevail over empiricism, and it's just not going to happen.
My
But before,
concern is the Buddhist truth of impermanence. What happens in the future? Like the globalists are always here in the background. They could bring in another liberal Democrat 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now. I mean, these forces are working. What if this is just an impermanent, wonderful golden age in America, a good period right now, but the globalists are going to come back in the future?
yeah, well, everything is impermanent. And it could be that, like I said earlier, that just power can go to Trump and Elon Musk's heads, and they can just start, violating the Constitution and that kind of thing, like the Democrats have been accusing them of from the beginning. But so far, it seems like they haven't done that. They're still like being good boys and like, acting within the restraints imposed upon them by the US Constitution. But before we
Yeah.
stop talking about Trump, I'd like to, since you're a Canadian, you live in Canada, sometimes in the news now we're seeing that there's a lot of Canadians that are like protesting against America now because Trump has made like tariffs against Canada, how they're not selling American whiskey in the liquor stores in Canada anymore and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring it up at all, what he's saying about Canada, but since you ask, yeah, I think his idea for the tariffs is not economically driven, it's politically driven, because I think it doesn't make sense for Americans to have tariffs. It's bad for the American economy. I think, the studies of the history of tariffs shows that. I think so. I'm against all these tariffs. So I wonder, is this some kind of a political move that Trump's making on Canada and also other countries? Like maybe he doesn't really believe in the tariffs himself. Maybe this his way of deal making. So I don't understand really why he's doing it. Yeah, I'm against the idea of tariffs. Like a lot of Canadians, we don't like the idea. It's like just today, Mark Carney became the Liberal leader, so he's going to be our new prime minister now. Just today, they decided him, and he's like another clone of Trudeau. He's a globalist, he's a banker, so he's going to be a terrible prime minister. I'd rather get the conservatives in. But the problem is, Trump is galvanizing Canadian nationalism. It's helping the Liberals in the polls. So he's, the Conservatives are more closer to Trump, but he's actually strengthening the Liberals since they're in power now. So Trump is actually creating greater nationalism, rallying around the Liberals as a result of this. So I'm not
Yeah, that's
happy
kind of
about
weird that
it.
the nationalists would rally behind the globalists.
Yeah, well, how smart is the average voter, right? They just want to get rid of Trudeau. They're tired of him after 9.5 years. So just have a different face. People don't look into it, don't realize that Mark Carney is probably worse than Trudeau. But I'm concerned maybe he's going to win the next election. I want the Conservatives to get in. So Trump's tariff seems to be helping the Liberals, whereas he's more naturally aligned with the Conservatives here.
Yeah, well, I guess for Trump to help Canada wouldn't be as important to him as for Trump to help America. But I think for starters, the tariffs are mainly just like a kind of strategy to sort of get countries like Mexico and Canada to be more cooperative with regard to guarding the borders. And I mean, that's the main reason why he was putting the tariffs on Canada, is just to get Canada to be more careful about guarding their own borders with America, so that there's not going to be as much fentanyl and that kind of stuff getting smuggled across the border. And then eventually, I think his plan is to just have tariffs be equal between countries. So if some country puts a 10% tariff on us with regard to, steel or something, we'll put a 10% tariff back on them, just to make it equal, to have like an equal playing field. I think that's his plan. But I mean, tariffs have worked in the past. There was a time when America did not have income tax, that the country was making its money to run the federal bureaucracy and all that through tariffs. So there wasn't even a need for an income tax at that time,
Yeah,
which
that was
would be
like
nice.
1916. I think it was a different world then, though now.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world, over 100 years ago. But still, I mean, it does show that tariffs can, under certain circumstances, like serve the country fairly well. And it's like most of the countries that are complaining about U.S. tariffs have already got more tariffs against us than we have against them.
Yeah, I guess I agree with what you're saying about the border. I had a legitimate concern about fentanyl through the Canadian border. Also, immigration. I think in 2016, when Trump first got elected, he didn't want all this illegal immigration. So Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada, he's saying, bring all immigration to us, so he was kind of like sticking the finger to Trump. And I think Trump remembered that, he was allowing all these illegals into Canada, and many would come to the United States. So I think he had a legitimate concern about illegal immigration. So
Yeah,
it's important to shut the border.
I don't think Trump likes Trudeau very much, to tell you
No,
the
no.
truth. He's calling him the
Well,
governor of the state of Canada and all this kind of stuff.
yeah, well, I don't like him. I never liked Trudeau from the beginning. I thought bad news. I never voted for him. Just let the viewers know. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but now Canadians are quite happy to get rid of Trudeau. It's funny. Trudeau's popularity has been coming up in recent weeks because he's fighting against these tariffs. So even though he just resigned, and just today they picked Mark Carney as his replacement, just on his way out the door, his popularity came back up. Who knows? He might try to come back, like his father left office in 1979. Then he came back. So who knows? Trudeau's still young. He's only 53. So I hope he doesn't come back.
Yeah. I thought his father was Fidel Castro.
Oh yeah, his father is Fidel Castro. I was that's true, but officially Pierre Trudeau, the man who raised him, was in for 16 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I assume that everything will turn out better with Trump as president, probably better even in Canada. I mean, there might be like a backlash for a short time, but I think things are going to kind of swing the other way, and Canada will probably benefit from, I mean, to some degree, I mean, there's going to be more equality between Canada and America. He's going to balance out the tariffs and all that so that they're like equal going both ways, I think. So the Canadians might not like that because they've been kind of taking advantage of American generosity, I think, just at the government level. Not that I'm trying to badmouth all Canadians, but
I'm not sure if that's the case, but still, I'm more more concerned about the whole world, not just Canada. I'm glad Trump's in, and also the conservative effect across the EU. Like the EU is so anti-conservative, and there's this conservative populist movement in the EU, like in Romania and other places. So I'm glad the Trump effect is affecting the whole world. So I'm concerned about the whole world. So much better
Yeah.
having Trump in there than the Democrats. I'm
Yeah,
so
the
happy about
EU,
that.
the leaders of the EU, the castrated feminist leaders of the EU, I mean, they're panicking as bad as the Democratic Party is in America because they
Yeah.
really can't fight against Trump because they don't have any balls.
And they can't fight against their own people. Their own people are fed up with the EU, all over
Yeah,
the
and they're
EU.
fed
Yeah.
up with just the country being taken over by Muslim immigrants. At
Anything
least
else
in
on Trump?
America, it's mostly Mexican immigrants and like Latin American immigrants that are generally relatively easy to get along with and willing to work for a living. They're not just hanging
Yeah.
out on street corners selling drugs and molesting like European women.
Yeah, they might want to keep some of these Mexican farmers here, not get rid of all of them. They say that, but they might be better off keeping some of them.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're not all going to be expelled.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. Well, that was a good talk on Trump. I'm glad we covered it because he's been on our minds, and we don't actually do current events. Dharma is timeless. Our old videos from 2019, I rerun them sometimes. Sometimes you get more hits the second time than the first time. Well, this is sort of a current events video.
Yeah.
Anything else on Trump, pannobhasa?
No, I think we're good, but I am cautiously optimistic with regard to the Trump regime, and I hope it will continue. That Trumpism won't just die after Trump finishes his second term. That it's going to continue. That MAGA or America First is going to be a trend in America that stays powerful for a long time after Trump is gone. Because that's
Yeah,
really
I
what
feel the
makes the
same way.
country strong. Is
Yeah.
it's just sort of like ancient Rome or whatever. It's just Rome first, and if other countries have to take the hit, then so be it, because Rome is number one. So,
Yeah.
and that kind of attitude politically is a very powerful one, even though it might not fit into people's ideas of social justice and equality and all that. Still, I mean, to look out after your own country first and your own citizens first does make sense for a national government.
It's also a Buddhist idea, if you want to help others, you really have to take care of yourself first. You got to work on yourself first.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
definitely think
Buddhist thing.
Trumpism is going to help the West in general, because it's really throwing a huge monkey wrench into the whole plan of what's the plan the half Japanese guy came up with.
Oh
And
yeah, the Koganov Kalergi plant and
yeah,
race
that
mixing
kind
in
of
the
thing. That kind of thing
1920s.
is definitely losing momentum due to what's
Yeah.
going on in America, especially.
Well, Trump, he can't overtly talk about protecting the white race. Like people, white nationalists, they vote for Trump. He's our guy, but he can never actually say that.
Yeah, I mean, the farthest he's gone in that direction is just like putting sanctions on South Africa and offering expedited path of citizenship to any white South Africans that leave as refugees.
I was on a meetup walk a few days ago with a retired Canadian lawyer. She's criticizing Trump. He's only letting whites in from South Africa. Like he's such a racist. Like I didn't discuss the details. Well, these are whites in shanty towns who've been discriminated against, and he's giving the refugees. I didn't even go there with her.
Yeah,
Obviously a leftist. Yeah.
lots of those is where you live. That's
Oh
all I've
yeah.
been told.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I feel the same way about Trump. So we should dedicate some merit for Trump's administration here.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, my woman actually took a picture of Trump and put it on her altar, and she was like sending metta to keep him from being assassinated before the election.
Well, I've done the same thing. Very good. But I think he's protected. I don't think he'll be assassinated.
Yeah, I think it's too late at this point. He's already got people that have the same vision that, that are like Vance might even be more of a firebrand than Trump is.
Yeah,
Trump is a
compared
little
to
bit more moderate than Vance is, I think.
yeah, when Vice President Vance was vice president, compared to now, if Trump does die, at least Vance is going to carry on more of that ideology than
Uh-huh.
that
And
Pence
he's going to
would.
be pissed too.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess
Okay,
in
well,
in Canada, pissed means drunk.
that's right.
So he won't be drunk.
Pissed off.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, pannobhasa. I'm glad we talked about the Donald, the Trump.
Yeah.